So you picked up a pork shoulder, you've got a Masterbuilt electric smoker fired up, and now you're staring at a 9-pound piece of meat, wondering exactly what to do with it. Today, I'm walking you through my full step-by-step pulled pork method on the Masterbuilt electric smoker, from the moment that the pork comes out of the packaging, all the way to shredding it and putting it into a bun. Every decision, every temperature, every time and call, nothing skipped. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly why each step matters, not just what to do. And that's the difference between someone who follows a recipe once and someone who can actually cook pulled pork anytime they want without looking up anything. If this is the kind of content you've been after, hit that like button right now. It helps more people find this channel, and it really helps out. And let's get to work. All right. You want a bone-in Boston butt. That's the upper portion of the pork shoulder, and it's the standard cut for pulled pork. Bone-in is the way to go for a few reasons. The bone conducts heat through the center of the meat, helping it cook more evenly. It also gives you a built-in doneness indicator. When the bone pulls out with a gentle twist and almost no resistance, the pork is done. There's no guessing. For size, you want something in the 8 to 10 pound range. An 8-pound shoulder will give you plenty of food for a group and cook within a manageable window. Go much bigger and you're pushing into the 14+ hours, which is fine, but you want to plan for it. When it comes to the fat cap, I suggest leaving it on, but give it a light trim if it's really, really thick. A 1/4 inch of fat cap is the target here. Anything over that can be trimmed down. You want enough fat to render and baste the meat during the cook, but not so much that it just sits there without breaking down. One more thing on the cut. Don't stress about the grade. This isn't a brisket where the fat marbling makes a night and day difference in the final product. Pork shoulder is very forgiving. It's a well-worked muscle with plenty of natural collagen. So pick up whatever looks good at your store and let the cook do the heavy lifting. Now pull the pork shoulder out of the packaging and pat it dry with paper towels. A dry surface means that the rub sticks better and the bark forms more cleanly. Moisture on the surface during the first hour of the cook is your enemy. It steams instead of smokes. Now take a look at the fat cap. If it's got any hard, waxy pieces of fat that are clearly not going to render down, you'll be able to tell by how dense and white that they look. You're going to want to trim those off, but leave the softer fat. That's the stuff that melts and bastes the meat. Check for any loose pieces of meat or hanging flaps on the sides. Tuck them in or trim them. Anything thin and exposed will overcook and dry out before the rest of the shoulder is done. And that's it for trimming. Pulled pork prep is generally easy compared to something like a brisket. You're not scoring the fat. You're not injecting unless you want to. You're not doing any complicated process. All you gotta do is pat it dry, clean up the edges, and move on to the rub. The rub does 2 jobs on a long cook like this. First, it seasons the meat from the outside in as the cook progresses. Second, it builds the bark. That dark, crunchy exterior crust that gives competition pulled pork its look and its flavor depth. For pulled pork, you want to rub with a solid foundation of salt and sugar. Then your spice layer on top. The salt draws out a little moisture, and then that moisture gets pulled back into the meat, carrying the flavor with it. The sugar caramelizes during the cook, giving the bark that slight sweetness that plays really well against the smoke and fat in the pork. A solid starting point is my sweet heat pork butt blend. It has brown sugar, which is for your caramelization base, paprika that adds color, kosher salt, which is your foundation here, coarse black pepper, that's going to add some heat. Garlic powder is your savory element. Onion powder gives a little bit of depth, and cayenne powder is going to add a little bit of sweet heat. Apply the rub right after you dried the pork and prep the surface. You're going to want to cover every side, top, bottom, and all the edges. Press it in rather than just dusting it on. You want to make contact with the surface of the meat, not just sitting on top. Let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes after you applied it and before you put it into the smoker. You'll see it start to look a little wet on the surface as the salt pulls the moisture up. That's exactly what we want. That moisture combines with the rub to form a paste that sticks throughout the entire cook. Now this rub right here is one of 50 in my backyard barbecue flavor system cookbook. Each one in there has a full ingredient blend, the wood pairing that works best with it, the meats it was built for, and the reasoning behind why every ingredient is in the recipe. All you got to do is drop flavor system in the comments down below and I'll send it your way. All right, now before the pork goes in, let's set up the smoker. First, drip pan on the bottom rack. Pork shoulder this size will release a significant amount of fat and liquid over the 10+ hours. Line the drip pan with foil before you put it in, and it takes about 30 seconds to clean up afterward instead of 20 minutes. You want the pork shoulders sitting in the center of the heat and airflow, not too close to the heating element on the bottom, and not crammed up against the top where the airflow gets restricted. Pork goes fat cat up. The fat is going to render as the cook progresses, and you want it basting down over the meat, not pulling underneath it. Run your meat thermometer probe into the thickest part of the shoulder, away from the bone. The bone conducts heat differently than the meat does. So if your probe is touching the bone, you're going to get a reading that's higher than the actual meat. More on wood choice in a second. Below the full tray before the cook starts. Preheat the smoker to 225 for 10 to 15 minutes before the pork goes in. You want stable, even heat from the moment the shoulder is loaded. Don't put cold meat into a cold smoker. And then try to bring them both up to temp together at the same time. And if you're getting value out of this, go ahead and hit that like button. It really does help the channel grow. And by the way, if you're new to backyard barbecue and you want something to reference for cooking times and temperatures that covers everything from meat to veggies and it's perfect for getting started, all you got to do is drop 100 in the comments down below and I'll send it your way. 225 is your cooking temperature. That's the number for a low and slow pork shoulder. Higher temps will cook outside faster than the collagen inside has time to break down. And you end up with meat that's technically done, but tough instead of shreddable. Your pull temperature is between 200 and 205 internally. Write that down. Not 85, not when the juices run clear, 200 to 205, and the probe slides in with zero resistance like you're pushing into warm butter. That's the collagen fully converted. That's when it's ready. At 225, a bone-in pork shoulder cooks at roughly 1.5 to 2 hours per pound, and a 8-pound shoulder puts you in the 12 to 14 hour window. A 10-pounder can push towards 16 hours. These are just estimates though. Every shoulder is different and the stall can add some time. So give yourself a buffer and don't set a hard deadline on when it has to be done. For wood, pulled pork works best with something mild that complements the sweetness of the pork without overpowering it. Applewood is my go-to. It's mild, slightly sweet, and it holds up well over long cooks. Cherry is another solid option, giving the bark a deep reddish color that looks great on camera and on the plate. If you want a little more depth, a mix of apple and hickory works really well. Hickory adds a traditional smokiness, while the apple keeps the overall flavor from going too heavy. Pure hickory for a 12-hour plus cook on pork can go bitter, so if you're using hickory, blend it with another fruit wood. You'll get the most meaningful smoke penetration in the first 3 to 4 hours of the cook. After that, the bark starts to set and the meat stops absorbing smoke at the same rate. So front load your wood chips, add a second tray around the 2-hour mark, and then let it ride. Once the pork is in and running, your job is mostly to stay out of the way. Check the probe readout every couple hours. You're looking for a steady upward climb in internal temperature. If it's moving, the cook is working. Don't open the door to look at the meat, because every time you open the door, you drop the smoker temperature and add time to the cook. Around 160 to 175 degrees internally, the temperature is going to stop moving. It might hold there for an hour, or it might hold there for 3 hours. And this is a stall. It is not a problem. What is happening is that moisture is evaporating off the surface of the meat at the same rate the heat is building inside of it. The evaporation is cooling the exterior as fast as the smoker is heating it. So the internal temperature flatlines. It will break on its own once enough surface moisture has evaporated, but you do have two options here. You can wait it out. The stall does break naturally, your bark stays intact, and you get the best exterior texture. Or your other option is you can wrap it. Pull the shoulder and wrap it tightly in butcher paper or foil, put it back in at 225. Wrapping traps the moisture and pushes through the stall faster, usually cutting an hour or more off the remaining cook. Foil is faster and gives a slightly softer bark. Butcher paper breathes a little more and holds the bark better. If you got the time, wait it out. If dinner has a hard deadline, wrap it at the stall and push through. If you want a rub that's already dialed in for pulled pork with the right salt to sugar ratio, the right spice level, and wood pairing baked into the recipe, I've got 50 of them in my backyard barbecue flavor system cookbook. Every single one comes with a full blend, the wood pairing, the meats it works best on, and the reasoning behind every ingredient. It's the reference I wish I had when I was starting out. All you gotta do is drop flavor system in the comments below and I'll send it your way. When your probe hits 200 to 205 and slides in with no resistance, it's time to pull the pork shoulder. But before you do the bone test. Grab the bone end with a gloved hand and give it a gentle twist. If the shoulder is done, the bone is gonna rotate freely. It'll feel almost loose, like it wants to come out on its own. If it's still holding firm with any real resistance, give it another 30 to 45 minutes and check again. Pull the shoulder off the rack and wrap it in butcher paper if it isn't already. Then wrap the whole thing in a towel and put it in a cooler. But today, I'm gonna let it rest in the oven. Turn the oven on to the lowest setting. For most ovens, like mine, this is going to be 170 degrees. Let the pork shoulder rest for several hours in there, and know that this rest is not optional because it does two things. First, it lets the carryover cooking finish. The internal temperature will rise a few more degrees even after the heat is off. Second, it lets the muscle fibers relax and pull the juices that have been pushed to the center back out throughout the meat. Skip the rest and those juices run straight onto your cutting board. Rest it properly and they stay in the pork where they belong. This is going to be for a minimum 1 hour in the cooler or in the oven. 2 hours is better. It'll stay hot the whole time. I actually prefer 3 to 4 hours. After the rest, let's start shredding. I'm using these bear claws to help me shred, but you should be able to do this with a fork or with some gloved hands. The bone should come out clean with a light twist. Set it aside and use it as proof of you're a good cook. Break the shoulder apart into large chunks first and then work these chunks into whatever texture you want. Pull it into longer strands for a more traditional stringy texture, or break it into chunkier pieces for more of a bite. Both are correct. It really comes down to personal preference and what you're serving it on. Once it's shredded, hit it with 2 finishing moves most backyard cooks skip. First, go ahead and put some of your barbecue rub that you used earlier. The rub is going to reinforce the bark flavor throughout the whole pile instead of just on the outside. Second, a small dash of apple cider vinegar, just enough to coat it lightly. The vinegar cuts through the fat and brightens the overall flavor and makes the pulled pork taste more alive on the plate. Don't skip either of these. From here, it's ready on a bun with slaw, over rice, in tacos. Pulled pork works everywhere. Now that you've got the full pulled pork method, you might be looking for a cook that doesn't require this kind of time commitment on your next weekend. Something you can start in the morning and have ready for dinner without the 12-hour window. So let me show you how to smoke a whole chicken on your Masterbuilt electric smoker. You can use the same temperature principles, the same rub logic, and the same wood knowledge. And you're pulling them off the smoker in about 5 hours. That video is right here, so go ahead and watch it next because you're not going to want to miss this step-by-step process. I'll see you over there. And have a good one.